famous Sistine Chapel located in Vatican City, Italy. As we can see on the outside of the Sistine Chapel, it is very plain. You would never expect such masterpieces to be displayed inside, but if we take a closer look, we can see the true beauty that Michelangelo created in 1508. Michelangelo was a very famous Italian artist who had an enormous impact and development on Western art. He created the inside of the Sistine Chapel when he was only 33 years old. Michelangelo began work on the frescoes in 1508 for Pope Julian. He continued to work on it for 4 years, but took a break in 1510, and the frescoes painted after this time are very different. For example, if we compare the narrative of the Deluge, which uses smaller figures, to the more idealized monumental figures in God Creates Adam, we can truly see the differences in style that was created because of this break. The Sistine Chapel is a very religious and functional place. This is where the new pope is selected by the College of Cardinals. Something also very unique about the insides of this chapel is that every surface, including the ceiling, floors, and walls, are covered in mosaic and fresco. The ceiling displays the scene of the 9-year testament separated by the painted architecture. The also very famous painting called The Last Judgment is a massive piece of artwork that depicts the second coming of Christ and the final and eternal judgment. With over 300 figures, it's astonishing on how this was completed in only 4 years. These frescoes are some of the most important images ever painted because of Michelangelo's revolutionary painting style called carving figures out of paint. He set the standards for what the Renaissance art really meant at this time. Figures were so realistic that they looked like sculptures, and adding to this, the brilliant rich colors used added depth that was able to show the idealized beauty and a religious optimism that the figures displayed. The ceiling frescoes show scenes from the Genesis that move across the ceiling in a chronological order. The scenes don't show any images of Christ, but lay out the story of the coming of Christ. The richly colored monumental figures help convey the emotional impact of the scenes for the viewers to gaze upon.
The second piece we'll be talking about today is the Doge. This is a fresco that was built 133 feet in the air by 33-year-old Italian artist Michelangelo. Michelangelo at the time spent 4 years in 1508 through 1512 making the ceiling painting in the Sistine Chapel. The Doge is located in the ceiling of the chapel in the third panel where the story of Noah is being told from the Old Testament and the biblical story from the Christians. Noah's story is about God's message to get out the sinners and wicked from the world. The ark kept in the animals and Noah's family and left all the sinners, as seen in the fresco, with their panic, struggle, and fear they have toward God's message to Noah. This message was to make the darkness go away, to start a new era with the flood over the world. Angelo did great to get the mood of this Bible story in the chapel by the emotion he showed in each detail of the figures. The painting is showing figures in many actions and movement in the frantic, crowded matter, showing the chaos in the time of this biblical story. Like other Italian Renaissance painters, Michelangelo did this fresco using dark, dull color mediums to send the energy of the painting. Michelangelo created this art piece on the ceiling fresco, which in this case is a painting on the chapel's wall plaster, one of Michelangelo's first frescoes in fact. In order to create an illusion of depth, Angelo would scrape some off the wet medium prior to painting. This method made visible outlines around his painted figures in his fresco. As we move closer into the Doge, in the center we see a small boat is about to capsize because of the unending downpour of rain. This surely is a metaphor for the man's powerlessness in the face of God. On the left side of the painting are even more people climbing up the side of a barren rock to escape the rising water. On the right, a group of people are fitting into a sanctuary from the rain in a makeshift shelter. As you can see, they are cramming themselves under the shelter, seeking a place to be safe from the wrath of God. In the background, we see a sense of struggle as a team of men work on building the ark. Noah's ark, as this is the only hope of salvation. During this fresco, Michelangelo creates a sense of physical space of the water and sky as seen the figures are into. They're separated in 4 distinct parts of this narrative. Unfortunately, from the floor of the chapel, the use of small, tightly grouped figures undermines the emotional content and makes the story harder to follow. Up close, the painting confronts the viewer with the desperation of those about to perish in the flood, which made people question God's justice and wiping out an entire population of the earth. Due to the Old Testament being more raw and violent, Michelangelo doesn't shy away from how these figures feel as he creates a sense of panic with his muscular brushstrokes detailing the contorted forms of the doomed people. The use of color is very complex as he makes the waters unforgiving white and gray rather than picture-perfect blues. The human parts of the painting are full of action, the bodies packed densely together and the details in their facial expressions. The most touching part of the Doge is the image of a man tenderly holding the drowned body of another, presumably his son. This would depict an act of love in the midst of a painting about retribution. As we come close to the painting of the Doge by Michelangelo, the fresco he made shows all the passion and torment, not the event itself, but those who experienced it. He expresses it in the movement and gestures. Seen in the figures, it shows their distress. Men may commit wrongs near the capsizing boat and around the ark, but the scenes of struggle, it opens up the emotion and movements in the mutual assistance and mercy. The question, due to religious reasons of Christianity, is why should all these people perish? Noah tried to get rid of the evil and sinners in the world, like God told him, according to the scriptures in the Old Testament. The world is full of unsolved problems with the overcrowded people, and the details in the facial expressions in the figures shows the fear and struggle they face with trying to seek mercy from God. The water of the baptism removes the original sin. With that, the flood was to create the world of sinners. Noah was saved from the water by the wood of the ark, just as the wood of the cross offers salvation to those who are in the church. 3 different patterns of behavior may be distinguished in human beings, while the righteous take refuge in the ark and find salvation, while the damned attempt to assail it. The others are lost due to their excessive attachment to worldly things and seek safety carrying their passions with them.
The last piece that we are going to look at today is the Delphic Sibyl. This piece is located on the ceiling along with other celestial and prophetic frescoes. This was painted in 1510 after Michelangelo took a year-long break from painting the Sistine Chapel. It shows his shift to monumentality, which means the paintings have been stripped down to only the essential characters represented on a monumental scale. Through this, Michelangelo was able to convey a strong sense of emotionality. There is a myth behind the Delphic Sibyl that is quite interesting. It is said that she was alive before the Trojan War, and that she would sit on Sibyl Rock by the temple of Apollo at Delphi, shouting prophets that turned out to be true, so she became very well known. In the painting, she is in movement. She is turning her head while her eyes are looking in the direction of Judith the painting. And she has a worried look upon her face, which some may say is because she just had an unpleasant vision of the future. Her hair and clothes are being blown by the wind and look similar to the wet drapery technique in Hellenistic architecture. Behind her we see her poodle attendant reading from a book, as well as her having a scroll, which we presume are prophets of the future. The Delphic Sibyl was painted with sculptural weight, which means that it looks as if she is coming out of the painting due to the contour around her muscles and skin. There is also idealized anatomy present in the painting due to the fact that she looks as if she has enormous strength, but she also has a sense of delicacy. Some people believe that the model that the Sibyl was based off was male, due to the more masculine look of her arms and the fact that he used male models to paint other females, such as the Libyan Sibyl. Both the Puto and the Sibyl are very masculine in physique and have visible muscles in the back or arm area. The painting is made to include many vibrant colors and contrast as well, such as the lines of her clothes that are solid yet light, and how she looks strong yet her face looks delicate. This painting is strategically placed among celestial landscapes as well as other saints and prophets. All of these prophets and sibyls were included in the Sistine Chapel because they foretold the coming of Christ in some way. Michelangelo may have also included them because he thought it validates the Christian faith by showing that people have always known Christ was coming. This work of art also shows the theme of foretelling that is present in almost every biblical story since the Middle Ages up to this point.